You're mid-sentence, explaining yourself, justifying your choice, defending your boundary, and you can see it in their eyes. They're not listening to understand. They're listening to dismantle. Every word you offer becomes ammunition. Every explanation becomes an opening for debate. Every justification becomes proof that you owe them something. And here's the truth that will change everything. Some people don't deserve your explanations. Not because they're beneath you, but because they've already decided that your reasons don't matter. They're not asking why to gain clarity. They're asking why to regain control. Psychologists have identified 4 distinct personality patterns that will weaponize your explanations against you. And if you're exhausted from constantly defending yourself, from feeling like you're on trial for simply having boundaries or making choices, you've been wasting your breath on people who are never going to respect your answer anyway. This is about the power law of explanation, knowing when your words hold value and when they're just feeding the people who want to consume you. The power law of explanation is a psychological framework based on the Pareto principle. Roughly 80% of your emotional exhaustion from explaining yourself comes from 20% of the people in your life. These aren't random individuals. They follow predictable patterns. They're the people who ask why not out of curiosity or respect, but out of a need to challenge, control, or invalidate. Understanding who falls into this 20% is the difference between protecting your peace and hemorrhaging your energy trying to justify your existence to people who will never validate it. This pattern often originates in childhood environments where your autonomy was constantly questioned, where you learned that your choices were always subject to external approval, where because I wanna was never sufficient and you had to build elaborate cases for the simplest acts of self-determination. You learned to over-explain, to preemptively defend, to justify your needs as if they required a committee vote. And that pattern followed you into adulthood, where you now find yourself explaining your boundaries to people who have no intention of respecting them, defending your decisions to people who've already judged them, justifying your choices to people who believe they have authority over your life. The power law works like this. When you explain yourself to the wrong people, you're not providing information. You're providing leverage. You're handing them the rope they'll use to bind you. You're giving them the map to your vulnerabilities, the script for how to make you doubt yourself, the permission to treat your boundaries as negotiable rather than final. Strategic silence isn't rudeness. It's recognizing that some people have forfeited their right to your inner world by repeatedly demonstrating they'll use it against you. Explanation is a gift, and these 4 types of people don't deserve it. The first type is the boundary terrorist. This is the person who treats every limit you set as a personal attack, every no as a negotiation, every boundary as an invitation to debate. They don't ask why, because they're genuinely confused. They ask because they believe if they could dismantle your reasoning, they can dismantle your boundary. If you say, I can't make it to dinner, they don't accept it. They interrogate. Why not? What's more important? You always do this. Are you mad at me? They're not seeking understanding. They're seeking surrender. Here's what makes them dangerous. They've learned that most people will cave under interrogation. If they ask enough questions, poke enough holes, express enough disappointment, eventually you'll either give in or feel so guilty that you'll over-explain yourself into exhaustion. They've figured out that your explanations are the weak point in your armor, so they keep drilling there. When you explain to a boundary terrorist, you're not educating them. You're showing them exactly which emotional buttons to press next time. The moment you recognize this pattern, the response is simple. I'm not available. Not, I'm not available because. Just the statement. When they push, and they will push, you repeat a variation. That doesn't work for me. I've already decided. My answer is no. No justification. No apology. No lengthy explanation that they'll pick apart piece by piece. Boundary terrorists lose power the moment you stop feeding them your reasoning. Your no is a complete sentence, and explaining it to someone who doesn't respect it is like trying to teach philosophy to someone who's only interested in winning an argument. The second type is the narcissistic validator, the person who only asks about your choices so they can center themselves in your story. They don't want to understand your perspective. They want to know how your decision affects them, reflects on them, or can be used to validate their worldview. When you explain yourself to this person, they're not listening to your words. They're translating everything into what does this mean about me? You tell them you're changing careers, and instead of curiosity, you get judgment. So you think you're too good for your current job? You set a boundary about family gatherings, and they respond, "Are you saying I'm a bad parent?" You share a personal growth decision, and they make it about how your choices somehow critique their choices. Everything you explain gets filtered through their need to be the pro. Here's what makes them dangerous. They've learned that most people will cave under interrogation. If they ask enough questions, poke enough holes, express enough disappointment, eventually you'll either give in or feel so guilty that you'll over-explain yourself into exhaustion. They've figured out that your explanations are the weak point in your armor, so they keep drilling there. When you explain to a boundary terrorist, you're not educating them. You're showing them exactly which emotional buttons to press next time. The moment you recognize this pattern, the response is simple: I'm not available. Not, I'm not available because. Just the statement. When they push, and they will push, you repeat a variation. That doesn't work for me. I've already decided. My answer is no. No justificación. No apology. No lengthy explanation that they'll pick apart piece by piece. Boundary terrorists lose power the moment you stop feeding them your reasoning. Your no is a complete sentence, and explaining it to someone who doesn't respect it is like trying to teach philosophy to someone who's only interested in winning an argument. The third type is the concerned troll, the person who disguises control as care, who frames their intrusive questions as worry, who uses the language of love to manipulate you into justifying yourself. They're the most insidious because they seem reasonable. I'm just concerned. I'm only asking because I care. Help me understand so I don't worry. But here's the tell. Genuine concern respects your autonomy. Controlling behavior disguised as concern demands compliance. The concerned troll asks endless questions not to ease their anxiety, but to transfer it to you, to make you feel responsible for their emotional state, to suggest that if you don't explain yourself thoroughly enough, their worry is somehow your fault. They want you to believe that you owe them peace of mind, that your choices should be filtered through their comfort level. That explanation is a form of emotional labor you're obligated to provide. And the trap is this: the more you explain, the more they find to be concerned about. Your explanations don't satisfy them. They fuel more questions, more doubt, more "but what about?" When you recognize a concerned troll, the response is compassionate but firm. I appreciate your care, and I've made my decision. When they push with "but I'm just worried about you," you hold the line. I understand, and I'm confident in my choice. You're not responsible for managing their anxiety about your life. You're not required to explain yourself until they feel comfortable. Genuine love trusts. Control demands explanations. And the moment you stop providing them, you'll see which one you are actually dealing with. People who truly care about you will respect your autonomy even when they don't understand your choices. Everyone else is just trying to keep you small enough to fit inside their comfort zone. The fourth type is the chronic underminer, the person who has already decided you're going to fail, who asks about your plans only so they can catalog the reasons it won't work, who treats your explanations as evidence that you're naive, unprepared, or delusional. They're the professional devil's advocate, the person who can find the flaw in every dream, the one who masks their lack of support as realistic advice. When you explain yourself to the chronic underminer, they're not listening to understand. They're listening to find ammunition for why you shouldn't do what you're doing. Have you thought about this risk? What about this obstacle? I knew someone who tried that and it didn't work. They position themselves as the voice of reason, but they're actually the voice of their own fear, their own regret, their own jealousy that you're attempting something they didn't have the courage to pursue. Your explanation becomes a list of vulnerabilities they'll use to discourage you. Here's the power move. Don't explain your dreams to people who haven't shown they can handle them. Don't defend your vision to people who only see obstacles. Don't justify your ambition to people who've settled for less and want you to join them. When the chronic underminer starts their interrogation, give them nothing. I'm excited about it. I'm moving forward. I'll figure it out as I go. No details. No roadmap they can critique. No explanation they can weaponize. Your vision is not a proposal that requires their approval. And explaining yourself to someone who's already decided you'll fail is like asking for direction from someone who never wanted you to arrive. So here's what changes. You start operating under the assumption that your time, your energy, and your explanations are valuable resources that should be invested, not scattered. You stop treating explanation as a social obligation and start treating it as a strategic choice. You ask yourself before offering your reasoning, will this person use my explanation to understand me better or to undermine me? Am I explaining because they've earned access to my inner world or because I'm afraid of their disapproval? Is this person genuinely curious or are they interrogating me? The people who deserve your explanations are the ones who've proven they'll respect your autonomy even when they don't agree with your choices. They're the ones who ask why out of genuine curiosity, not judicial review. They're the ones who might not understand your decision, but who trust that you have valid reasons that don't require their validation. These people are rare, and when you find them, explain freely. Give them context, share your thought process, invite them into your decision-making. That's not weakness, that's intimacy. But for the boundary terrorist, the narcissistic validator, the concerned troll, and the chronic underminer, silence. Boundaries without explanation. Decisions without defense. Choices without justification. No, that doesn't work for me. I've decided. My answer stands. Watch how quickly they lose interest when you stop feeding them your reasoning. Watch how the relationship either evolves into something respectful or reveals itself as purely transactional, one where your compliance was the only thing they valued. There's a reason they taught you to always explain yourself, to always justify, to always have a good reason that passes external judgment. Because people who constantly explain themselves are easier to control. They're easier to guilt. They're easier to talk out of their boundaries. They're easier to keep small. But you're not required to be easy. You're not obligated to make your autonomy digestible for people who want to consume it. Strategic silence is power. Unexplained boundaries are still valid boundaries. Unjustified decisions are still your decisions. And the most liberating realization is this. The right people won't need lengthy explanations to respect you. They'll trust that you have reasons. They'll honor your choices even when they don't fully understand them. And the wrong people, they'll weaponize every word you offer. So why offer any at all? This year, stop auditioning for approval. Stop defending your existence to people who've already decided you're wrong. Stop explaining yourself to the 4 types who will never validate you anyway. Save your words for the people who've earned them. Protect your reasoning like the valuable resource it is. And remember, you don't owe your inner world to people who've only shown they'll trash it. Keep your explanations. Keep your peace. And watch how much energy you reclaim when you finally stop justifying yourself to people who are never going to understand anyway.